Lisa Tomey again. I have David Martin here from Fine Lines Literary Journal. Happy to have you back on here again today.
Nice to be here. I always enjoy talking about fine lines, and our motto from 1992 when we started Fine Lines is "We grow writers," and there are many ways to do that, and every writer is unique, and Fine Lines tries to help individuals who come to us find their path. And I'm really interested in creativity, all of the angles, all of the paths that people take to increase their creativity. And today, let's talk about that.
Okay. I'd be very curious to know, as a creative person, not only in writing, I'm also creative in art. Like this is my art journal where I, started doodling something. And then in the
Wonderful.
process of doodling, I start writing a poem to go with it. And so I'm curious to know when you talk about creativity, what exactly do you mean?
Well, that's a good question. There are multiple ways to define creativity, and I've used many different definitions to follow to find my own creative muse. The most common way that works for me is journaling. You talked about doodling, and there are so many different ways to keep a journal, but I see it as an informal tool that anyone can use. If we're talking about creativity, we're talking about originality, imagination, many different aspects of creativeness that wind up in extra productivity. And maybe I'm going out on the edge, but I think when I see someone like you who is creative in many different ways, I think most people, if they allowed themselves the opportunity to make a mistake, if they allowed themselves the opportunity to forget about all the many ways that our society tries to compel us to be perfect, if we could take that word and just throw that out, we'd be creative in many, many, many ways. Ingeniousness is not the chosen way for the select few. We can all be ingenious if we got over the fear of, well, if I'm not perfect, I'm not even going to try.
Exactly.
And I've had so many students and so many different schools give that attitude, and I see it all the time in sports. I coached 7 sports in my recent past, and goodness, the best athletes or the most productive teammates were the ones who had short memories and maybe made a mistake on one play, and then they would forget it and give 200% effort on the very next play. And those are the ones that over the time frame of a whole game were the most productive. In sports, just as soon as you realize no one can play a perfect game in tennis or sprinting or in track, goodness, football, basketball, no one can have a perfect game. And if you get over that fear of, oh, I missed that shot, you'll miss the next 10 shots if you don't get over it. And writing is like that. Writing is a non-contact sport. And all the power to you. You can start drawing, and maybe psychologists say you're using one side of the brain, and that process of doodling or using a pencil to sketch triggers one thing and the other side. I used to know wonderful artist, Keith Jacobshagen, who eventually became a professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the art department. And his father worked for an aircraft, small plane aircraft company in Wichita, Kansas. And they made small passenger planes. And so at the age of 14, growing up in the family where his father worked in that kind of situation, at the age of 14, he became a pilot. And he was flying all over the nation at the age of 14 before he could get a car license. And he had the ability to draw at a young age. He didn't know where his life was taking him, but he was teaching himself every day what art was going up in a plane. And it's no accident, I think, because of that unique environment, that he started painting, and 90% of his canvases were sky. 90% of the canvas was sky, clouds, sun, and looking down on the earth, which was the bottom 10% of the canvas. And you could see cars and highways and buildings and towns, and sometimes there were people.
So his perspective from the sky point of view gave him a different focus for his creativity.
Well, yes, and so he started there and then wound up being a formal art student when he got to college. And he had a rigorous discipline. I still remember this. He explained it to us in class one day. And he had an old van in college with maybe it was a Volkswagen van with a sliding door on the side. And he would have an idea for a painting. Anyway, he would drive out in the country and park at 3 in the afternoon, where he thought he was going to eventually develop a painting of this area. And he had old accounting ledgers, the thick binding, thick cover, and my goodness, they were big, maybe 10 by 14, I don't know, something like that, big books. And he would sit, slide the door open for his van, sit inside the door and look at this scene and sketch on the left-hand side of that ledger what he imagined maybe sometime later, who knows, the next day or the next week or the next month, that painting would come from that sketch. So what did he do on the right side, you ask? Good question. He switched to the other side of his brain and he wrote words or sentences and sometimes paragraphs describing that scene that would later become his painting. Well, then what did he do? Well, he put his accounting ledger down when it was all done, and sometimes it was 6, 7 o'clock by the time he got all that done. And he would drive his van back to his studio or his apartment. At different times in his life, he had an apartment and then a studio. And he would get his canvas and get his paints. And then he'd have a little easel where he would open the accounting ledger so he could see the sketch on the left side and the words describing it on the right side. And then he would begin to paint. And he liked to paint nonstop until the canvas was done. And sometimes that was late in the morning. Wow, is that discipline?
It is.
Can we do something like that when we write our stories or our poems? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like when I'm doing a drawing, I certainly can think of things I can write about that. And also, if you are enjoying, being out in nature, You can certainly notate certain things and make certain photos and drawings about what you saw and come back and write about those.
So here's an established painter, and he's sketching. He's doing all of the preliminary artwork for that medium. Plus, he's journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
Yes,
tying
it is.
the sketching and the art to journaling.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if we could become more productive, clever, prolific, fertile, inspired, stimulating by finding new ways to see through the journaling process. I'm convinced. I've taught close to 50 years in multiple different ways in schools and business. And the journaling aspect is the most, what's the right word there? The most visionary tool that we as writers can use, because we can adapt and include all these other art mediums in the writing process.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
Why
why don't
not?
more people journal? You're asking the toughest questions. Why don't more people journal if it is that productive and that beneficial? Good question.
Yeah.
I think it means you have to acquire discipline, like Jacob Hagen did for his artwork. And I am not a professional artist. I'm envious of people who can draw figures, and when they're done, they look like the figures they intended to make. My children, when they were growing up, just laughed at my attempts at drawing, said, "Oh, Dad, your stickmen look so sick." And that wasn't my medium for art. But Albert Einstein, I like him. He was, the last time he was over for dinner, he told this joke. When he and his wife first got married, he said, "We made a pact. And it was this: in our life together, it was decided I would make all of the big decisions, and my wife would make all of the little decisions. For 50 years, we've held true to that agreement. I believe that is the reason for the success in our marriage. However, the strange thing is that in those 50 years, there hasn't been one big decision." So it's nice to have a plan. It's wonderful when the plan works. And if you're disciplined, following your plan, all kinds of unexpected, important things can happen. How long have you been keeping a journal, Lisa?
Off and on. I'm not real good at it on a regular basis. So I do pick up and just do some raw writing on pretty regular basis. I'm actually in a class right now on for journaling. I'm just getting started on as far as a formal class goes. But I've done the morning pages, and like I say, I get up and do some just early morning writing. So it's basically the same idea. Um, I never really considered myself much of a journalist, although I do journal, if that makes any kind of sense. But it does require discipline, to set aside the time to do it.
I've taught adults. I've taught, so many different levels of education, and the story that I keep hearing is people of all ages telling me, oh, I'm not a writer. Nobody wants to read what I would write. But I have this story that keeps coming back in my mind over and over to the point that it is haunting me. What do I do? And I say, well, do you like being haunted? Why don't you write the darn thing down?
Write it down.
Maybe the haunting will go away. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to only write bestsellers.
Mm.
And it's wonderful when those people come back to me and say, well, I made an outline. Yeah. Well, then my dreams, I kept saying I should do more. Yeah. Outlines are usually just the beginning. Then what'd you do? Well, then I tried to write a prologue. Yeah. Then I tried to write the first chapter. Yeah. Are you following your outline? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, miracles never cease. You have to have a plan, usually, and then you have to acquire the discipline. As a boy, I was trying to grow up so fast, I wanted to play sports with the big boys in the neighborhood. And when I got invited to play on their basketball team or their football team, I just felt, oh, I'm growing up faster now. I'm going to be big like they are. And that was quite appealing to me then as a child in middle school and then later in high school. But what happens if you want to make a team? You have to learn the rules.
Yeah.
You have to do your part.
You have to practice.
And you have to go to practice. And once I made the team, I realized the responsibility of the team, and sweat was involved. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
And I didn't mind. I wanted to make the team. I wanted to do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised how many of the older boys stayed away from the sweating. They were older, they were bigger, they were stronger. They thought that was enough. And here I come with an attitude that I wanted to grow up and I wanted to knock the bigger boys down in football or run around them in basketball or outshoot them. And I just kept trying and trying until I really was obnoxious to those older boys. And they started paying attention to me because when I got knocked down, I bounced back up and I tried to knock them down, on the next play. And it was a game. It was fun. I was enjoying it to the point that some of the older boys didn't think it was so much fun anymore. So discipline, discipline, discipline.
Yes.
Can be applied to writing. When do you write?
I do my best writing early in the morning. I tend to get up pretty early, sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and do my writing. It's my mind is the clearest without interruptions and all of those sorts of things.
And that's important. And then I've got friends of mine that don't start writing till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I don't know how they exist and keep functioning. And they want to write all night and then sleep all day. I could never get away with doing that if I wanted to. Thank goodness I never wanted to. I get up at 4 or 5 every morning and write until the family wakes up. And so I think writers that are disciplined, that produce the most, know who they are, and they follow their biorhythms that lead their activity, and that's so important.
Yeah, some
can't
people
fake
are
it.
night people. Some people do write better at night, but that's what works for them. And then you have people who, have children and the children need to, be attended to and that, so they kind of have to work around their schedules. So I admire people that, have young children at home and find the time to work it out to write and work and take care of all the things that need to be taken care of. So kind of grab a time whenever they can. One of the things that
But
I do is carry a little journal around with me. And so when I'm out and about or, contemplating or just sitting somewhere, I can pull that out and write in it. So it gives me something to work on. I can write ideas, so something I want to expand on later. And those can come any time of day, you know.
wise words, wise words. Wouldn't it be nice, since we're talking about the world of imagination, wouldn't it be nice if we could learn to write our own prescription, like a doctor writing a prescription for a sick patient? You take this prescription and you'll be better in 2 days.
The
Okay,
prescription for writing.
there you go. Let's create a writing prescription for ourselves, for our friends, for our students, for our community members, whoever wants to grow in writing. Try this one. Okay, the first one, first item on our prescription is discipline that you mentioned, writing at the same time every day. Arranging the day, blocking out X number of minutes or hours that you can write with passion and be undisturbed. Number two, start informally. Write for yourself. You are the best audience you will ever have if you find out who you are, if you learn what makes you Lisa. So that journal approach is most important. This is my prescription.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline number one, informal writing number two, number three, the journal approach. Number four, every day try to laugh at your stupid mistakes. Laugh out loud. Oh, Martin, you're just so funny. You keep doing this over and over again. Don't you know that doesn't work? When will you ever learn? And if you can laugh at yourself, that gives you more room to expand in the world and grow because you're not afraid to try new things.
Right.
Number five, make mistakes. Bless you. I did this in class years and years ago at a public school, and I made the sign. It looked like the sign of the cross. And the student in the back said, "Hey, this is a public school. You can't do that." I can't do what? You're making the sign of the cross. Oh, no, 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 no. That's the beginning of breaking down a sentence. That's another long story I don't want to get into right now, but that was humorous. That was so funny. We're not diagramming. Number six, create a safe place to tell the truth. I have so many writers that want to write fiction because they don't want to tell the truth. And I get around eventually to telling them I think the best fiction writers are the ones who know the truth. And in their characters, when you know the character, you will learn a lot about the writer and you will know what the truth is. Anyway, you have to have a safe place to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
7, I have a magic drawer in my desk. It's right here. And it's my topic drawer. And I pull it out, and right now, oh, it's maybe a third full. And I just shut it, so I don't look at it very often. But anytime I have a great idea, a great idea, I write it down briefly, and I stick that piece of scrap paper in the drawer, and then I shut it so it can't jump out.
Good idea.
Now, when I have the time, I open it up and I stir all the topics up and I pull one out. And then I get my journal and I write about that topic until I'm exhausted, tired, don't want to work on it anymore, or I'm done. Then I can throw it away in the wastebasket.
Mhm.
Sometimes I am busy enough, and I like to be busy. I like what I do. I spend a lot of time with fine lines and creating the quarterly journal, 4 books a year. And I forget about the topic drawer. I keep filling it up and shutting it, but I don't look at it. And then sometimes, a couple of times a year, I can't shut the drawer. It's full of topics and I can't shut the drawer anymore. Then I know I have to rearrange my days and make time for my topic drawer. And I work really hard. It's a great discipline. It
Yes.
forces me to pay attention to the topic drawer. And goodness, my journal books get full and I start new journal books, and it's fun. My drawer controls me. Number 8, writing by hand. I love the computer I have. I officially made it a family member about 10 years ago. I have 3 children and I have this mechanical one right here that helps me every day. But writing by hand is how I get started. I keep a pen and a notebook journal, and I also have a journal electronically and files that are full. But writing by hand allows me to go places inside my head that typing on a keyboard doesn't always reach. I don't know if you've had that experience.
Yes.
And writing by hand and typing informally, I get so much more done. Every time I end an interview, every time I end talking to a writer, I pick up my pen and our salute is right on.
Right on. Right on.
WRITE. And the 10th thing is, I am my best audience. I laugh first at my own stupid mistakes, and that gives me permission to allow other people to laugh at me too. And but if I move myself with writing, I have a good chance of thinking, oh, this needs to be written more deeply, more completely, and I've got a good chance other people are going to like it. And sometimes sitting down in my bunker, down in where I can't be disturbed, and if I can write and bring a tear to my own eye, there's a good chance I've touched on a vein that might be productive. So that is my 10-item creative writing prescription.
Okay. Sounds
How
like
about you?
it sounds really good. I would keep a real simple prescription would be pick up the pen and put it to paper every day and let it flow. Keep it simple.
Well, I went over that prescription in all its detail in one group, and somebody groaned in the back and said, I'm not going to remember all that. And okay, you want the simple version? You want the collapsed version of this 10-step creative writing prescription? He said, thank God, yes. And I said, number 1, go to work.
Absolutely.
And he said, what? And I said, do I have to say it louder? Writers write.
Writer's right.
You want to be a good writer? You write. You want to be a better
Absolutely.
writer? You write more. You want to be a better writer than that? You write every day.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for your time today. And I want to just say one more thing. Right on.
Hallelujah. Right on.
Right
With a
on.
W.
With a W. Thank you.